Thank you.
You said something about working on a documentary. What is this documentary about, and um, what does it highlight?
Well, the documentary grew from an experience that I had after I had started my own Montessori school in Seattle, and that ran for about 25 years. But um, there are always the problems when you're running a private school with um, space, renting space, your landlord, um, and I had such a problem like that. But sometimes when these problems come up, it opens a door for something else. And I had a teenage daughter who was attending a public high school, and she was taking a class on home economics. And she noticed that the high school, which was in Seattle, it was called Ballard High School in Seattle, had an empty space in it that had been built originally for teaching family and consumer sciences. And she said, Mom, come and look at it because maybe you need to move there. And I'll introduce you to my teacher. And so I did meet her teacher, invited the whole class to come and see what our school looked like. And it was in a lovely location with, it's a long story there, but it had both indoor and outdoor environments for children to learn in. And the rent had gone up, and it was a flat roofed building, and it was a lot of heat. So we had air conditioning in that room because it had belonged to a doctor once, and it was his space. But when it was a very hot summer, the the air conditioning was removed and delegated to another part of the building. And that had a real bad result on the children because sometimes they would be intent on doing something and they their bodies were not feeling comfortable. I could usually switch the get more air into the environment moving in the hot summer if I had the air conditioner, and they would calm down, and that's something I noticed. So anyway, my rent was going up, my air conditioning was gone, and I started losing children because we didn't go past first grade, or we did with a few children, maybe up to third grade because I had hired a teacher there. But my daughter said, Come, Mom. And I met the teacher. All the class in studying human development came to our school, and we had a viewing room. We had places where they could be seated out of the way of the children and they just observe. And they invited me to come and and use that space through an alignment with Seattle Public Schools. And it was a particularly eye-opening experience to be with high school students and have a lab school for them to come and observe and intern in. Even though the internship wasn't a complete internship, it opened their eyes. They began to observe. We had kitchens in both of our spaces, so the children could cook things for them and they could cook for us. We learned so much. I mean, I learned so much from being with these young adults that I thought, well, who started all this anyway besides Montessori? Well, there's this wonderful woman who started all this way back before Montessori, in a sense, because she was the first woman to graduate from MIT, just like Montessori was one of the first doctors in Italy. And she was a professor. She could have been a professor. Well, let's see how. She didn't get a real title um, like she should have, but she was a doctor of science and gave us. She did a lot of studies in physics and chemistry. She became a chemist, and she did studies on sanitation and water, clean water, how to keep clean water, because there were lots of problems happening in Massachusetts in her time. So every time I drink a glass of clean water, I think about her because that started the whole um, awareness of how we must keep our water clean. And she was also a person who saw the importance of ecology. In fact, she termed the word ecology and used it while she was teaching. And her language was beautiful, and her name was Ellen Swallow Richards. So I thought, wow, everybody needs to know who she was. And we have home economics, and it is now called family and consumer sciences here, but it's still called home economics around the world. And both of these women had parallel relationships in teaching about the environment. Dr. Montessori did too. And and so I thought, well, I really want to tell their story, and that's where the film project came in. And I started a website with my nonprofit because I worked in the public schools for 7 years with the high school students and teacher, and I wanted people to know about that. And we started a website, which we call the MMLCC.org. And if you don't get it right, you might end up with a lawnmower department that has the same same lettering. But everything just kind of moved on. There were people that just came to us. I had worked with another group of my trainers who really need to have trainers in teaching the children in Montessori because it's so scientific. But um, by the very fact that I could be in the high school, I began to see how we could do that. And we networked with the city, and we were able, working with the high school teachers, to write grants so that we could look at social emotional development. And this was excellent because we did get a grant from King County to study our social emotional development under the guidance of people who had studied Marshall Rosenberg's work. He was Jewish. I grew up in, I can't remember exactly, but it's in the United States. Uh, People get all these reactions to whoever you are, whether you're Irish or Italian. Those are my experiences, that people throw rocks at you because you came in and you took away jobs. And it's just the same old story over and over. And he worked with the Palestinians and the Jews, and in helping the children learn ways to acknowledge their individual needs and what's behind them and how to relate to one another. So I thought, this is great. I want to have him come. And he had also used puppets. And I thought, oh, this is great because kids aren't going to want to use puppets in the high school. And he called them the giraffe and jackal puppets, which come from Africa, and telling the story of the giraffe who can see long distances into the future and knows how to listen, and the jackal who's kind of like our coyote and is out there telling us all the gripey things that are going on and howling about that, and the giraffe is calm. And so I thought, well, this is a way to teach high school kids how to work with puppets, with these puppets. We didn't have enough time to go into it deeply, but we worked with families and parents and children and teachers and from all over. And it was just so exciting. I thought, wow, this ties into what Dr. Montessori wanted for peace. This ties into what Ellen Swallow Richards wanted when we consider, what are we feeding our children? How are we keeping them healthy? It ties into so many directions for young adults to be thinking about what they want to do. When my son was um, in college, I think or it was before college, in high school, he says, Mom, I just don't know what I want to do or be. And I think, well, we haven't exposed you to a lot of variety, and you should have learned that in school. What did you love? What did you love knowing about? Did your teachers read to you beautiful stories, or were you just getting miserable kinds of stories like my daughter got from her literature classes that were violent and sad? It's like, no, you can start with, where does the food come from? And how does that nourish your body? And how does it make you feel? And why is it that that child started itching all over in our program when we opened a jar of peanut butter? And so many things that can open your mind to learning about this planet we live on. And so I wrote something about that. I put it on my website. My webmaster was practically volunteering. She's just a wonderful mom. She's seen how Montessori has affected her life and her child, um, and children. And maybe not all children want to be in a Montessori school. So it's okay to have choices. But when I put it up on my website and we divided it into 3 compartments because I talk a long time. And one of my board members said, Gail, nobody's going to want to listen to it that long. And it's too long. Nobody wants to read that. I found a young man from Western Washington University, who said that he would help me, and he recorded my story. And then it took a long time before I found anybody who could actually make a film of it. And a young man who was visiting from Thailand came to Blaine, Washington. I met him through some musical friends of mine. And he said, this is very interesting. And he had attended a baccalaureate school in Thailand and had wonderful organizational skills. And he took my script and put it all together in order with photos. And we put them up so that I could show them to teachers and students about the correlation between learning about our homes, families, and locations in the world and who we are. And he turned it into this great film. It was only 18 minutes long. Well, I did begin to show it just to little select groups, but I didn't know that you had to get copyrights for all these photographs that he had borrowed off, and he didn't know. And we had written all these disclaimers about fair use. And oh my gosh, I had to stop showing it. Meanwhile, I needed additional help because I don't have all the skills that it takes to be able to do all the research. And a young woman came into my life who helped organize things. She too is a very intelligent young woman who also sees the importance of learning about languages and cultures. And we're redoing the film again, and we're doing it long distance. I have board members that are helping me, and it's all a volunteer program. Um, I can't say that um, we're volunteering. I mean, people that are teachers who have traveled the world, who've taught in Niger or Nigeria, and that's the other beautiful thing, was that I've always worked with people from many countries, like Montessori did, and every child is unique. So I'm trying to show that by telling the story of these 2 women and how the effect of working in the high school for 7 years and in having a lab school could be something that we could do research on again. But it will take university backing. It will take people with open minds. It will take people who will discuss things and um, how these visions change with the individuals that come to do it. And I joined the Montessori Institute in Prague. Let's see if I can say it. Yes, in Prague. There's a Montessori Institute in Prague that just got started, and it's led by 2 women right now, but there are more men getting involved in trying to open schools like Montessori, but they have not yet seen the connection with their adolescents and the 3 to 6 year olds. And if in studying brain development, we see that those first 3 years of life are extremely important in brain development and in learning language. And children learn language from the adults that they're with. They don't learn from television, Sesame Street, all that. They might pick up a couple of things, but they aren't going to learn like they do with a human being. This is very important, and they need somebody who nurtures and loves them. And then when they get to their adolescence, wow, boom, the flower is blossoming all over the place, and the everything is changing in the body, and the child is becoming aware of, oh, who am I now? What am I going to do? How do I become a part of the community? And who is my community? And um, there's so many things to be learning about that, and providing them environments for finding out who they are. Dr. Montessori had a plan for that, but it's only begun. But there have been evidence-based studies on creating those kinds of environments too, where they can be involved in work. And that's why the career and tech ed programs are important for anybody who wants to be a carpenter, whether a male or female, or anybody who wants to study the marine life. There are so many things that relate to our planet that you can change your occupations throughout time if you have the skills to be able to do that. So I think Montessori worked on loving, providing compassion, continuing to learn, because we can't know it all. She learned her way. We have to involve scientists, and I've studied a lot of them now. I've collected books on this, and poetry, music, all those fields that we may be interested in. Or now I was asking Kiana, what are the social sciences? It was the only class I made A's in college, but I don't even know why. But I'm happy to know that you are doing your work in spreading the values of human beings and what they are contributing to the good on this planet. Thank you.
Throughout your journey with Montessori, what's the one thing that really has stuck with you?
Well, I've had a lot of joy in learning about people and with people of all ages. And I think it's important. History is very important, knowing our history as human beings, continuing to learn it, and wanting to open people's minds to the places where we connect and how we can share the resources on this earth. And are we being responsible when we overpopulate? Because I know we love our children, but will we cause them pain in the future because we're not really looking at how we are creating environments for them to learn in? Are we creating ghettos by building all these big high-rise places to house people? I just am all over the place, Angela, because I keep looking at our children and how we deserve to give them beautiful, peaceful places to live with adults who know how to compromise and share. And so I do believe that our religions were very helpful to us as we developed, because they helped to answer a lot of spiritual questions for us. And we all developed different answers to that depending on where we came from and who taught us. But I think we should be able to look at all of that without blowing up one another in one way or another emotionally. I haven't learned to not react sometimes. I'm still trying to learn to respond. I need to be a better listener. I'm just so excited about what I've learned that I want to share it and say, hey, let's go beyond. Let's take all the goodness that we have in the people that we live with and communicate with one another. And now we live in a time which is so precious that people imagined it. They didn't know how we could come into another room and just be there with one another from all around the world. And I just listened to something this morning about the importance of moms and dads, or the male and female, and what each of us brings to life because we each contain within us different ways of looking about life. And so I don't know. I'm on a journey still, Angela. And I want to be with people who are seeking ways to live peacefully. And I think you have to begin with the children. That's what Dr. Montessori said. And you have to also have the models of the adults that you want them to be with.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Gail. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for studying with us today. We hope you can join us for our next podcast episode, where we will have another study session where we will discuss social science in reality.